Thank you, Speaker. I rise this morning to speak to this matter of public importance and want to underline all contributions in this place should at all times be honest. And I find it really distressing when we are in this place acting on behalf of individuals and families right across Tasmania that the basic level of decency can't be contributed in this conversation, and you can at least be honest. And that actually reflects across the whole parliament. The Premier can't be honest with people in industry. Members of the crossbench can't be honest about their participation in the stitch-up to create a crisis that has actually caused this response. Members of the Green can never be honest about what their motivation is and what they would settle or be happy for in terms of a contribution, a consideration, a conversation about how they might want to be collaborative in this place. Let's start with honesty from the Premier, writing a letter to industry stating his absolute backing for industry, saying how important it is, saying how significant it is for this state, and that he would never seek to undermine that or walk away from it, yet weeks later he does. And it's interesting when you look at that side of the House, and there's been this bit that just doesn't reconcile for the weeks since the election, where the Premier stands up, like the salmon industry, like the greyhound industry, and say, I understand that people will be disappointed, maybe even angry, but he can't recognise that what he has done is sell out Tasmanians to protect his own position. But then I've asked a series of questions to the Minister for Primary Industries, and curiously in those responses, he appears mostly to be in support of industry and says quite strong things about where the industry is at and the contributions it makes. And in fact, there's a cheer squad behind him from the Leader of Government Business on those presentations about industry, but then is led to read from a script about what he seeks to do to support industry. Well, I can tell you, calling this a pause for industry, let's be honest here. It's not a pause, it's a moratorium. And last time we had a moratorium on the industry in Tasmania, the impact and the trauma that it caused to individuals and families right across Tasmania is still being referred to here today by the Greens. The pause, the moratorium in industry creates a void, and in the void comes up the negativity, in the void comes up the opportunity to create things that are just not true. And what happened last time? There was the Maugean skate put front and centre in Macquarie Harbour. Now, we know the data on the Maugean skate is that they are doing well, that they are breeding well, and that in fact some of that early evidence that was presented undercalculated the populations of the Maugean skate in Macquarie Harbour. And yet we have the Greens, the Deputy Leader of the Greens, here today saying we've got to pull out all the leases from Macquarie Harbour. And we have a member of the crossbench that can't be honest about his participation in the fact that we get to this current moratorium, where I was actually concerned for Mr George from Franklin. I was concerned that he'd been stitched up by the Premier and thrown under a bus when the Premier rang him and said that there was a crisis, there was an emergency, there was a new disease outbreak. Peter George, poor Peter George, went on the ABC radio the next morning and said, well, I've been called by Premier Rockcliffe and I've been told that there's a disease outbreak. Yet at not any point has Mr George suggested that he's been misrepresented. Has anyone actually argued? And today he says that there's an emergency. Yesterday he used there's an emergency. The industry have not declared an emergency. You cannot stand in this place, contrary to Standing Order number 2, and intentionally and calculatingly represent mistruths. The industry have not called an emergency. That is not correct. And in fact, I would call on Mr George to withdraw that comment. What it now seems really clear is that Mr George and the Premier are actually in lockstep here, and they have constructed this crisis together to create an opportunity for this review. The poor members of the Liberal Party have had to come along with that, whether they agree with it or not, and now the industry find themselves in a moratorium again that is materially impacting individuals. It's materially impacting investment, and it is taking away any certainty for the individuals in Tasmania that give everything and have for many carved out their career and their livelihoods in this industry. When there is a moratorium, it causes uncertainty, it risks investment, it risks the livelihoods of individuals. People in this place need to start being honest about their position with the salmon industry, with their position across all industries in Tasmania, because what we are actually doing is not, and I say we too often, what you are actually doing is playing politics with the lives of individuals and their families, people who have worked hard to secure themselves in parts of Tasmania where they can actually create a life. So you need to be honest, you need to be upfront. It's not not a pause, it's a moratorium. You've constructed and created a crisis, Mr George, with the Premier in order to respond to this. You know that you are not about a review. You sponsored a petition in this place that closed just a couple of days ago to fully withdraw all leases out of all waters in Tasmania. People need to be honest about their positions in this place.